I'm going to tell you the entire story of the Modern Warfare 2 raids because this story ties directly into Modern Warfare 3, which releases later this year. So the story begins, as most do, with the most unsuspecting of people. A goat herder in the Satik Mountains in Urzikstan recently discovered Al-Qatala troops pouring into a small concrete structure that jutted up out of the ground. Worried about what might be going on, he reported this to the proper authorities, who relayed this message all the way back to the chief of the Special Operations Division of the CIA, Kate Laswell. She began to personally monitor what was happening in this region, what was happening at this bunker. And as she watched and watched for days, she noticed that Al-Qatala troops would go into this bunker and yet no one ever came out. Hundreds of Al-Qatala troops poured into this bunker and no one ever left. Beginning to worry about what this might mean, she requested help from the nearest troops she could find: Farah Kareem, Alex Keller, and the Urzikstan Rebellion Force. It was mutually agreed that Alex Keller would take a couple troops in and try to figure out what was going on in this underground bunker and stop it. However, he quickly goes in and sends out one very ominous text that the tunnels here go deeper and further than they first expected. And since then, no communication had been heard. After 48 hours passed, Kate Laswell decides to send in Captain Price, Kyle Garrick, and Farah Kareem to try to figure out what was going on and stop whatever is happening within the complex. Price, Farah, and Gaz all meet at the entrance to the underground bunker, where Kate Laswell reveals a couple more pieces of information that she's learned in the last 48 hours since Alex Keller went missing. She reveals that this was actually an underground bunker system created by the Soviets called an Atomgrad, the idea of a nuclear-powered city underground that could survive a nuclear war. The Atomgrad was built to help the people inside survive. It has its own water supply, it has its own way of growing food, and it's all powered by a nuclear reactor. However, this was not a civilian construct. This was not something built by the Russian government. It was built by the Russian military, meaning that there was likely the intention of military operations being run out of the facility. And so the team enters the Atomgrad, rappelling down the same ropes that Alex Keller and his team had used not 48 hours earlier. And upon entering the very, very bottom, the very depths of this hole, they discover a set of double doors. And these double doors open to reveal a massive underground concrete river, guiding the water flow through all the way over to a large metal doors that block the path entirely. And as the team begins to look around a little bit more, they discover that Al-Qatala troops are swarming this area, likely in response to Alex Keller breaking into this area just 48 hours earlier. Gaz, Price, and Farah try to hold on to the element of surprise by eliminating troops as they go stealthily. But it doesn't take long before the stealth is thrown out the window, and this turns into a full-on firefight between Al-Qatala and the team. But this is not a well-trained Al-Qatala. These are the grunts, the soft targets wearing their civilian clothes, holding old AKs that barely work, and a couple of really well-armed and well-trained soldiers leading these troops. However, they present no problem for Price, Farah, and Gaz. But what is a problem is this massive set of double doors blocking the path forward, blocking the water. As they search around, they begin to find an old ancient computer, barely working and obviously damaged through years of neglect, and it requires a code to open the door. So they begin to look around for the codes themselves, having to use old cameras to find the codes scattered around the facility. And upon entering the correct codes, they unlock the door, and the door opens up to reveal a very dark secret. Behind these doors was an old Soviet submarine, obviously intended to launch out of this facility and survive in the event that the facility got destroyed, as this waterway led directly into the ocean. The submarine, though, suffers from neglect and damage. The submarine is flipped over, facing the sky with its underbelly. It's very rusted and very damaged through years of neglect. But on the workbench next to the submarine is where the team notices something very, very important. On the wall is spray painted 3-1, an obvious sign that Alex, aka Echo 3-1, had been through the same exact path. As the team looks down below the water surface, they notice a hole in the wall that leads somewhere. And on the bench sitting next to the spray paint is a single rebreather that allows the team to breathe underwater, but there is only one for 3 members. The only path forward through this entire room is through that underwater passage, so the team must now swim underwater while sharing one single rebreather between the 3 of them. As they begin to dive down into the water, they begin to swim through hallways, noticing tons of offices and conference rooms, lots of signage supporting the Soviet military, and it kind of seems to sound aloud with the echoes of generals and political figures arguing and planning for a world war that never came. Although it might possibly be an indication of something yet to come. As they continue to swim down these hallways, they come across a half-submerged stairwell, lit ablaze by bright green chem lights at the base of the stairs, submerged in the water. It is the sole light source you find in these hallways, and it is a sign from Alex that you are on the right path. After stopping for a moment and the small air bubble that sits atop these stairs, the team then begins to dive back down and try to swim forwards, coming across an elevator shaft that leads down again into more inky black darkness. But this elevator shaft also holds a very dark secret. It is in fact booby-trapped with a hand grenade and tripwire, set up by someone, and it was likely not Alex, indicating that they planned that someone else might follow. As the team carefully navigates around the tripwires, they come out into what appears to be a sub-basement, a room that was still under construction when the facility was originally being made. You hear the occasional creak and groan as you go by. Looking at the walls, you can see that it's roughly shaped by dynamite and pickaxes. You see a ton of wooden beams that support the structure, but they seem to creak and groan as they hold up the weight of the entire mountain that they've had to do for years, all whilst being submerged underwater and slowly decaying. It gives you the idea that you might be buried at any second by a collapse. Price, Farah, and Gaz slowly swim into a room that appears to be ready for construction. It had been blown away and there was a large air bubble at the top of it. As the team swims up and climbs up, they notice that there is in fact air up there. They can breathe, they can relax, if yet only for a moment, before having to descend back down again and try to find yet another path forward. There are a ton of offshooting tunnels, but upon finding the right tunnel forward, the team swims into a fully completed room. This room is mostly flooded, except for a small air bubble at the top of the room. As the team begins to examine the room, they discover that the room, in fact, has a generator, with a cord leading to a door that is obviously electrical powered. But the generator sits mere inches away from the water, a bad splash threatening to shock and kill everyone in the immediate radius. The door itself is submerged underwater, requiring someone to hold on to a button to open the door, and yet it also has to have power. It is a complex situation where the team has to trade off between who's opening the door, who's powering the generator, and who gets to have the rebreather to survive underwater. After the entire team passes through these doors, they come across what appears to be a set of stairs leading up into air. The air that they find up above is breathable. They can take it in, but the air itself is musty. The years of mildew and neglect have built up its own unique smell, but yet it is still breathable. Farah, Captain Price, and Gaz continue to advance down a long hallway, coming into what appears to be a set of two concentric hallways rotating around one center room. This room, however, has a code lock and a biometric scanner, requiring 3 codes to fully open the door, but the biometrics for each person can only be used once, requiring the team to run around, find the codes to open the door, and each individual person must input a set of codes whilst fighting off Al-Qatala troops trying to stop you. And as the team gets all of the codes in, the doors begin to slowly open, but the computer estimates that it will take 3 minutes to fully open the doors, due to likely to years of neglect and the computer being partially submerged underwater. Price, Farah, and Gaz now have to sit at this door and wait, but it is not a relaxing wait. It is a wait filled with firefights, filled with bullets flying at you, and most importantly, bomb drones, along with juggernauts and tons of Al-Qatala troops pushing forward to try to stop the team as they advance forward into whatever is in this room. And it is very clear that Al-Qatala doesn't want anyone to see what is in this room. However, as the doors slowly open and the team is able to get in, they quickly slam the doors shut behind them, immersing themselves into a round room caked in darkness. The team quickly flashes on their lights and looks around, and they discover bodies lying on the floor. It was part of the team that was sent in with Alex, lying dead on the floor, but upon examination, there is in fact no Alex among them. He is still missing. And not soon after this, Gaz, being the proactive person that he is, finds the switch for the lights, and flipping it on, it reveals what was in the center of this room. The center of this room held an I.C.B.M, an intercontinental ballistic missile, tipped with some type of nuclear warhead according to what are the signs on the side. However, the warhead is stories above you, and you can't really see where the warhead itself is at, and this brings about another sign of concern. There is a nuclear missile in the facility, and the nuclear warhead, the nuclear payload, may have just been stolen by Al-Qatala. And this is when they try to send out a message to Kate Laswell to kind of update her on the situation. But considering how far they are underground, there's no guarantee the signal will get out. But they attempt it anyways, before springing back into action, trying to advance up this missile silo up to the top floor where the warhead is being held. This area requires lots of climbing and parkour skills that the team normally would never have to use in a combat situation. As the team climbs up to the ledge that holds the second floor entrance, there is a single Al-Qatala guard there. He is no trouble for Captain Price, Farah, and Gaz. However, his death screech sets off a barrage of Al-Qatala soldiers trying to stop the team, trying to stop Farah, Price, and Gaz from advancing forward. And they slowly make their way through this large maze of interconnected tunnels and hallways leading out to what appears to be a ramp. And next to the ramp lies a very ancient and very damaged steam pipe, every couple seconds letting out a burst of air as it gets a new surge of life. As the team quickly makes it through, they turn around to see they're being pursued, in fact by a juggernaut, armored and holding a minigun, chasing down the team. One juggernaut, however, is no problem for Farah, Price, and Gaz, as they quickly eliminate him and move on to now the third floor of the silo. The team then comes across a wall that they'll have to climb up to get to the fourth floor to advance further into the complex. However, this wall is blocked by steam pipes, and having to let off steam so that each member can advance, they slowly make their way up the wall to what appears to be an AC vent, not even a fourth floor at all. As the team begins to crawl through, Captain Price has a thought. How would Al-Qatala know about this underground facility? Someone would have had to tell them about this facility. And more importantly, that someone would have to be somebody who has the insider knowledge about what this facility was, as most of the records were lost to time. Someone who is Russian, who was there or knows about the facility being constructed. As Price, Farah, and Gaz exit the crawl space, they emerge amongst the first of a multi-story room made from steam runoff pipes and an industrial system for lifting up vent covers. In a moment of intellect and what could only be the thoughts of a dedicated soldier, the team opens a series of vent runoffs in order to jump from one vent cover to another, and in doing so being able to successfully reach the other side of this very large, very deep room. Once upon the other side, there is a cable perched precariously off the edge of a small gangplank sticking out off the concrete, very, very loosely held into place as it stands. And this team slowly comes up this cable to reveal yet another vent maze they will have to navigate. As they release the vents, they hop across from one side of the room to another in this elaborate series that allows them to make it all the way back over to the original side they were on, but 5 floors higher. As they bust through the set of double doors on that side of the room, they discover what is apparently a small armory location for Al-Qatala. They quickly eliminate the troops before running into yet another room that was at one time a service elevator to carry heavy equipment up and down to build the I.C.B.M itself or other equipment within the facility. However, it has been unused for years and years. The team then begins to climb up the room over top boxes and climbing up cables just to advance and get higher and higher, fighting off Al-Qatala all the way. The problem being Al-Qatala has the high ground, and there is no cover for the team, so they must quickly and efficiently eliminate the Al-Qatala troops as they try to advance up the room. And they slowly make their way up to the top of the room, fighting off the last couple Al-Qatala soldiers before they briefly come to a door and open it up to reveal yet another steam pipe parkour maze. However, this is no problem for Farah, Gaz, and Price, who had previously done this 2 times already, and the third time eliminated no problem for them at all. This leads them into yet another set of double doors, and in this room is a single hole. This hole leads down into the inky black darkness below. Unaware of what it might be, the team continues having to drop down, and upon dropping in this room, they feel immense pressure, as Al-Qatala are ready and waiting in the dark. They have Dragon's Breath shotguns that briefly light up the room, showing what appeared to be old barracks. They fight the armored troops with shotguns, and as they proceed down a nearby set of stairs to the floor below, they are met with a stream of bullets and bright flashes lighting up the room. What they're seeing is a juggernaut holding a minigun, and he is still no problem for Farah, Gaz, and Price as they work together to use explosives and their guns to quickly eliminate him and try to advance forward. And as they do so, they come across the staging area for the Al-Qatala troops in this room, where they had set up all of their armor, all of their weapons, all of their ammunition, and it's all centered around a door, a large vaulted door made of steel, a couple inches thick, not something you could easily open, but something you could blast through if you had breacher charges like Captain Price. Without missing a beat, they plant explosive charges on the door and blow it off, revealing a dark secret. A secret connection that confirms the story of Black Ops games and the new mysterious Russian villain are in fact linked together. This was no standard military project, but yet an extremist project led by the Perseus Group, with the goal of a world war. The room is scattered with the remnants of a war you could have sworn was over. In a sealed room to your right, a dangerous obstacle. A room filled with Russian gas. The gas that the Russians used against Farah's people in Urzikstan. The gas that we saw in the Black Ops games. The Nova gas. The room itself is decorated with Medusa's head symbol, the symbol of Perseus, making an important connection to the team that whoever knew about this facility and told Al-Qatala is likely the continuation or the newest version of Perseus. As you look to the sealed room to your right, you realize it was never meant to be filled with gas, but it had emergency systems in place to filter out the gas, to stop the fans from pushing gas into other rooms, and emergency doors to seal the room shut in the case that the gas did escape. And as Farah, Price, and Gaz look across this gas-filled room, they notice on the other side is yet another room with glass pane windows they can see through, and another set of controls on the other side, allowing access and the ability to stop the gas like you would on this side. And slowly the team takes turns breaking into this room, venting out the gas and stopping the fan so each one of the members can move through the room. And the first teammate to make it to the other side then turns around and tries to return the favor for his other teammates, trying to reveal and help them out the correct path forward. But these actions themselves indicate that there is going to be, at some point, a gas overflow. Venting the gas out has started a combustion somewhere else in the facility that is building up pressure and will eventually leak gas into the facility, quickly killing anyone the gas comes in contact with. And as the team reaches the other side, they fight off a couple of Al-Qatala troops before heading down a set of double doors, coming to a large hallway. And as they open the set of doors, they turn around to see that the gas itself has finally reached the maximum pressure point and is chasing them down this hallway. They quickly bust through the door and begin a long sprint down a hallway full of Al-Qatala soldiers. Soldiers who are too oblivious to notice that the gas is following the team, but obvious enough to notice that the team is there as they try to quickly eliminate and kill them. The team runs past without a single problem, makes it to a door, a very large, gated door that acts as an airlock, where they close the door behind them and open the next door to reveal the nuclear warhead itself. Or so you think. The team begins to then yell for Alex, trying to find him until you hear a knock on a large vaulted door behind them, to which they turn around and a response is heard on the other side. You open the door to reveal Echo 3-1. The following conversation between Alex, Farah, Gaz, and Price reveals that Hadir is in fact leading Al-Qatala, and he has stolen the nuclear warhead and spared Alex out of respect for his dedication to Urzikstan and to convey a message to his sister, to stop and turn around, to let him continue with his actions and continue with his original plan. However, Farah's reaction says it all. She begins swearing and promising that she will kill Hadir as they try to find him. Gaz, worried that the team might endanger themselves and fail without anyone knowing about what they've learned, decides that it's best that he return back up to the surface to secure transport and notify Kate Laswell of what is going on. Alex, now reunited with Farah and Price, guides them quietly through some nearby tunnels in the hope that they can catch up to Hadir and capture the nuke. They quickly pick off the Al-Qatala fighters, who are unaware and unsuspecting of the team as they advance. They advance forward into another missile silo, and as you look up you can see the surface, and as you look down you can see the distance that you traveled just to find out the nuclear warhead had already been stolen. There is also a single elevator in the room used to carry and lower large equipment in this room. As the team vaults their way over to it, they try to lower themselves down. This is until the elevator shudders to a stop just above a small platform labeled 9B. The team then jumps over to the platform, trying to advance further as Alex, Farah, and Price fighting their way across a bunch of troops until they come across a switch that stops the power and stop the elevator. They quickly flip the switch and rush back to try to jump on the elevator itself. After landing on the elevator, the team continues to lower down further and further. But this time, Al-Qatala troops are peering out onto every single ledge that they can find and trying to shoot at the team, causing a firefight on a moving platform that makes it incredibly harder for the team to try and survive. However, they still manage to keep going until the elevator yet again shudders to a stop just above a new ledge, and as they jump onto this ledge, they see that there's a large gated door in front of them. and next to it is sitting an electric saw, an industrial grade one, to cut concrete and rebar. One of the teammates then grabs the saw and begins to cut through the door, trying to advance further. And not long after getting through the door and picking off a couple Alcatala troops who are brave enough to try to fight Alex, Farah, and Price, they find yet another generator. They flip the switch for this generator and the elevator starts to descend again. They rush back and jump on the elevator one last time. The elevator continues to descend down until it reaches the very bottom of the silo, an area of dirt and muck filled with years of neglect, and parts of walls that had fallen off on the way down. This room itself is almost a symbolic metaphor for the relationship between Farah and Hadir. At the very top of this room, you can see sunlight, you can see the brightness, but as you descend down further and further into this silo, further and further down into the muck, you just start to see really how awful this facility is, how much it's decayed over time. Similar to how Hadir has decayed from a once great soldier who is fighting for freedom into now a terrorist, wishing to kill everyone who's ever stood against him. In this room, however, is a single path forward. It's a path forward through the crumbling infrastructure of an underground tunnel that led to a large armory. Quickly refilling on all their supplies, the team then again begins to descend down into the darkness of the floors below through a large hole in the armory floor. The room they drop into is lightly lit with small lights around the edge of the room, reflecting on the dark water that sits below the team. There are enemies present in this room, but they represent little more than a speed bump to the team, not really a barricade. They quickly jump across the room, figuring out that the room itself actually has a large code that will have to be input in the right order. Upon activating the computer to input the code, the room itself seems to shudder to life with electricity, as the water that sat below the team begins to be electrified, causing damage to anyone who might fall in. And the computer also opens up a set of nearby doors which will lead Alcatala troops directly into the room, directly into a firefight between Farah, Alex, and Price as they try to defend themselves while inputting the correct code and not falling in the electrified water. A real tense situation for the team that they manage to navigate somehow. They make it through the situation by inputting the correct code. It opens up into a large tunnel. The tunnel is a mix between large hallways and cramped spaces, all lined with explosive barrels, C4, and tons of fuses linking them all together. As the team squeezes their way past these explosives through the narrow corridor, they come out into a red-lit room. This room is unique as it has tons of traps scattered around the room, motion sensors, C4, pressure pads, and a ton of other different things scattered around the room with the sole intent to blow up anybody who might land on the floor. The team then jumps across the few bookshelves that remain in the room. They advance through a hole in the wall leading into a large room filled with water, and inside this room is another submarine. This Soviet submarine, however, is still in good condition. Unlike the one that they had seen earlier, this one is still upright and looks relatively well made, well maintained almost. However, no one's been in this facility for years, and the team notices nearby a water control room, exposed by a destroyed wall. They then work to activate a number of pumps and controls to continue to flood the room to raise the water in the room enough so that the team can climb up onto the crane holding up the submarine. As the team climbs up onto the crane, they leap to the side of the room where there's a large ledge. This room holds a lot of breaching charges, likely the ones that Alcatala used to expose the water controls in the first place. The team then grabs these controls and jumps back onto the crane, and after doing so, they move the crane over just under a nearby catwalk and plant the explosives. They then blow the explosives and detonate the catwalk so that it falls down, allowing them to get access to it from the crane. As they run up onto the catwalk, they run onto a nearby concrete area where they discover that the Alcatala commander is actually standing there, and he takes off running as Alcatala troops swarm to try to stop you. His only goal is to go tell Hadir that Alex, Farah, and Price are coming for him. He wants to convey the message so that way Hadir can set up an ambush. However, the team quickly picks off the last few Alcatala soldiers, chasing down the Alcatala commander. As he busts through a door, the team follows him, and Farah doesn't take a second to waste to stop him from warning Hadir. She puts a round in his back and then one into his forehead. And as the door closes behind the team, they look up to the second floor to see a bulletproof glass window. And behind this window is Hadir. As Alex begins to look around the room, he notices that there's a ton of explosives. And yet Farah acts brashly and starts firing bullets right into Hadir's head through the bulletproof glass window, doing no damage to her brother, but instead sending one of her loose shell casings, still hot from being fired, right onto a fuse. As the fuse begins to go, Alex rushes over and cuts the cord, and he stamps out the last little bit of flame before anything can happen. And Hadir comes over the intercom telling the team, "Drop your weapons." To which they all do unwillingly. No one wants to drop their weapons, but they're in a room that is sealed off, filled with explosives, and Hadir is holding the trigger. As they drop their weapons, Hadir comes down from the second floor and tries to talk to the team. He tries to explain to them his motivations, why he's doing what he's doing, why he has a nuclear warhead. And the agreement between the entire team is that a nuclear warhead will not solve your problems. It will only make things worse. But Hadir refuses to listen. Hadir believes that he is right. However, Hadir also tells the team that he will lock them up and imprison them until his mission is complete. He takes Farah separately, but Captain Price and Alex are both thrown in cells opposing each other in a large prison area. Farah is taken to a separate room where she is sat down on a chair and tied to it, and a bag placed over her head. Her brother tells her, "I will not stop you from coming for me, but if you do, I will fight you." Shortly after Hadir begins to walk away, Farah begins clambering around trying to break her chair, successfully doing so. But her hands are still tied behind her back, and the bag is still over her head. She has no way to get it off. That's when Captain Price and Alex notice that above their cells on either side are CCTV cameras, and Captain Price and Alex still both have their comms. So they begin navigating Farah through the path up to where they are so that way they can break her out. However, upon them reaching there, Alex is forced to negotiate with the guard, try to convince him to let him out. As Captain Price frees Farah's bonds, Alex continues to distract the guard, telling him, "I have a rich uncle, maybe we could work something out." Not long after, as Farah gets free of her bonds, she comes over and stabs him to death, and then proceeds to go and stab the other guard, before letting out Captain Price and Alex. However, the button that opened the doors also sets off an alarm, notifying all of the Alcatel soldiers in the base that they had escaped. They quickly rearm and head down the exact same path that Farah just came up, and upon entering the room that Farah was originally in, they discover that it is in fact a large tunnel with tons of brand new Alcatala vehicles, likely the vehicles that General Garbrani negotiated for and bought from the Russians at the beginning of the Modern Warfare 2 campaign, yet again drawing another connection to Hadir and General Garbrani, another connection to where the story is going for Modern Warfare 3. The team then begins to advance, Captain Price, Farah, and Alex hiding behind vehicles as they try to advance forward, dodging past claymores and fighting off soldiers before getting to the other side of the tunnel, coming to a large, shut metal door. In a nearby control shack, they find a button. Pressing the button, it doesn't open the large metal doors, but instead opens a small security gate to the side, which the team quickly rushes down, trying to advance forward, and they rush and have to stop. They entered a room filled with explosives and laser-activated mines. And these mines are all attached to explosive barrels and other types of old ordnance that had been left by the Soviets a long time ago. At this point, the team has to do the only good thing to ever come out of France: parkour. They have to start parkouring away around, jumping on old explosives, jumping on beams, and trying to make their way through the room. Each little time they advance forward, they turn off the lasers that were behind them, and they keep having to advance forward and eventually coming across lasers, explosives, and Alcatel soldiers they have to pick off and eliminate before they rush into the lasers themselves or their bodies fall into the lasers after killing them. After making their way through the trial of parkour and fighting off a wave of fresh Alcatel soldiers, Price, Alex, and Farah make their way towards a detonator sitting on the table. The detonator for the nuclear warhead, which they quickly stash in their bag. They then crawl into a nearby AC vent, leading them into a sudden drop into a control room. In the nearby area, they discover that the nuclear warhead is being held in a capsule, but defending the nuclear warhead is multiple juggernauts in this small confined space in a maze of servers. And on top of all of this, there are pipes running through the entire facility that occasionally are broken open by a random stray bullet, leading to a fire. One team member stays behind in the control room to stop the gas and fire as the team comes across them. And the other two teammates then have to eliminate all of the juggernauts and find out which juggernaut has the nuclear keycard which unlocks the nuclear warhead. As they quickly pick off the last couple juggernauts and find the keycard, they rush over and unlock the nuclear warhead to one small, or should I say, very large problem. The small nuclear warhead is not in any type of container. It is a raw warhead. As one of the team members picks it up, they begin to suffer physical damage. The longer they hold the warhead, the more damage the radiation does to them. It starts to affect their vision, blurring it and eventually causing rainbow colors to appear. It starts causing them to stagger and causes them to taste pennies randomly. They have to take turns carrying the nuclear warhead in the raw. With all the radiation leaking into their bodies, they hand it off between one another, getting it back to the control room, where a lead-lined box sits, and they quickly throw it inside the lead-lined box, seal it up, and strap it to their bag, as they have to advance forward now and stop Hadir, because Hadir will never stop until he detonates a nuclear warhead in Russia. The team has to stop him. Price, Farah, and Alex have to stop Hadir once and for all. They rush out of the room into another room with a set of double doors, and upon opening these double doors, you see Hadir is standing there in the middle of an elevator filled with bulletproof glass. He begins to ascend, telling everyone that they can't stop him and that he will keep trying no matter what. The team then begins to take ascension cables, climb up different floors and sets of stairs, until they eventually get above Hadir and above the elevator, and they jump down on top of the elevator. As they do so, they start to beat the brakes and the cables holding up the elevator, and as they break them off, the elevator begins to fall. The team quickly jumps off the elevator, jumps back into cover, and the elevator slams into the ground at full force. This would be the end of most people's concerns. However, with the crash of the elevator, every Alcatal soldier left in the Atomgrad begins to rush the team. They're trying to save Hadir. They're trying to stop you from recapturing Hadir or killing Hadir. Alex, Price, and Farah begin to fight off every single enemy that they encounter throughout the Atomgrad. The standard unarmored grunts with just civilian clothes and cheap AKs, to every type of armored troop they ran into, riot shields, juggernauts, and dragon's breath shotgun wielding soldiers all rush them. They try to defend the one room that they are stuck in, fighting off all of the Alcatal that they can, trying to refill on ammo any chance they get as they fight off the last of the Alcatal soldiers in the facility. Finally, the last soldier drops to the ground dead, and the fight is over. But there is still one loose end: Hadir. As the team opens the elevator doors, they see Hadir sprawled in the corner, bleeding heavily. He then begins to attempt to justify his actions to an unfeeling Farah, and gives one final warning to his sister: defend Urzikstan, the real Russians are coming. As he passes, we see Farah break her unfeeling shell, shedding a single tear for her now deceased brother, before telling Price and Alex it's time to go. Back on the surface, above the slaughter that was the Atomgrad, the team splits, as Gaz arrives with a helicopter, and so does Farah's team with a truck. They say their goodbyes as Price and Gaz load up the nuke into the heli, and Farah and Alex depart in the truck. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe down below. And until next time, I am Icebergs, your Call of Duty informant. Stay frosty.